Hello and welcome to PBBN TV. My name is Mark Rosetto. I've got Jeff Lubin from the USA. How you going, Jeff?
I'm doing great, Mark. How are you doing? Good to see you.
Good to see you too. I remember we first connected in Clubhouse many years ago, and
Right.
I was always like, this guy's a smart guy. This guy's pretty intelligent. He's been around for a while, and I remember you signed off every time with, "This is Jeff Lubin."
Oh, well, thanks for having me on there. Uh, are most of the people listening here are in Australia? They're all around the world.
Majority will be Australian, but there will be definitely a few people around the world. So let's do a quick introduction. Jeff,
Okay, sure.
who is Jeff Lubin? Who are you? Like what do you do? I know what you do, but let's give us the
Well,
lowdown.
what happened was I started out actually not in my life not as a photographer. Uh, I had kind of a rough growing up. I was a high school dropout, and I went into the U.S. Navy at 17. And when I got out, I had no education, so I went back to high school at 21 and got a degree and went to Washington D.C. To go to college. And I went 2 years on a GI Bill, which is the government, U.S. government helps you pay for it if you're a
Yeah,
veteran. And then after that, I worked during the day and at night. I worked many jobs, but I went to work for the U.S. Copyrights Office, which is part of the Library of Congress. I worked there for 16 years
yeah,
and absolutely hated it. I went there basically just to have a job, and I wound up wife, kids, two mortgage with a mortgage, and I just was very unhappy. So, like a lot of people, it's kind of our business is kind of very few people just start out to be a photographer. Usually, us
yeah,
we come from different things. So, in any
absolutely.
case, I started. There's kind of a long story. I don't want to use up our time talking about all this, but I did some photography and I got some notice, and I went to photography school and I studied with the Monty Zucker, who was a very famous photographer who happened to be in my area. I studied with him,
Yeah,
and I also studied with Charles Lewis, who was a business photographer, but was very good with business. So I studied with both of those, and I made a goal to get out of the job within 3 years. So
yeah,
what I did was I worked 6:30 to 3 with the government, and I worked from 3 to 11 at night doing photography. And that was in the beginning, it was everything. It was
yeah,
baseball teams, little league, things like that, commercial work, anything with a camera. And I
yeah,
did a lot of weddings. I started with weddings because that's the easiest thing to start with.
yeah,
And so my mentors, I learned how to create a brand and a look of my own.
yeah,
And so I transferred out of that other stuff, especially the weddings, and I started to become a specialist in portraits. So I worked a studio in my home for 3 years, and then I opened a little studio in a shopping center on the second floor, which was
yeah,
a storeroom, and we decorated it up to look beautiful.
yeah,
And so we cut the rugs and did all that stuff ourselves. And
yeah,
I went to work every day in a three-piece suit
yeah,
to kind of dress up everything. But in any case, I was there 3 years. After 3 years, I went from zero really to $285,000. So that was more than I was making with the government easily, even
yeah,
times two after expenses. So after 3 years, I quit the government and I went full-time photographer. So the
yeah,
first 3 years were kind of tough because I had the wife, the two kids, and the mortgage, and she was not
yeah,
making money outside.
yeah.
So, but after 3 years, I was doing really well, and I had saved enough money that I could sleep at night. And
And
so I built it up, and so I left the government at 36. By the time I was 50, I had my first $1 million. And
and
so, and what we did was high-end portraiture, and I built a very high-end brand. And in the beginning, uh, I didn't really have much money to market. So I used a lot of my own type of marketing techniques.
yeah,
I printed a three-panel color brochure.
like a
And
trifold. Yep.
yeah, so I found a little, the little newspapers that they're little for your community. They stick on
Yep.
your doorstep. So I was able to work with them and identify the zip codes that I wanted to go to.
And what year was that? Like, what year are we talking?
This was 1984.
Oh, wow.
84, 85. And so so I was able, so what it was cheaper was, we bought them in bulk, the printed brochures, and we
Yeah.
paid like, I think it was like back then a nickel to put in each one. We paid
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
5,000.
Yeah.
And that kind of, so what was really cool about that is the newspaper was basically black and white, but when they would open up, the brochure would fall out and it was all three color.
Yeah.
And so I did that. And then I started doing displays.
Yeah.
And I got, like I would go to, for example, I would put my portraits in like a frame store.
Yeah.
And I would say, hey, I'd go in and I say, you sell frames, right? And you say, sure, because obviously that's what we have here.
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, well, I sell large, portraits to the same clientele you have because some of the people who come to my studio say they like your frame store.
Yeah.
So I said, let's do this. I'll put a 30/40 in one of your frames and I'll put some brochures on the counter and you can give them out. And anybody who comes to me from your from yours, that they got my brochure from you,
Yeah.
I'll buy the frame for you or I'll send them to you. So obviously that's a win-win for him because that's what he wants to do and sell frames.
Yeah.
So that worked quite well. And then I would go into a beauty shop, which in the little shopping center I was in, and
Yeah.
I made a deal with the owner. I said, I'll do photographs of your clients, and you'll have instead of these little ones that come from from the books, you'll have your own custom from your own beauticians up on the wall. And I said,
Yeah.
in return, I just want to put, one of my portraits